Dr. Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stared at the ancient stone well rising from the Tibetan plateau. 3 months of searching through satellite data, 2 weeks of hiking through impossible terrain, and now this. The well stood perfectly preserved, as if someone had built it yesterday instead of centuries ago. Strange symbols covered every inch of its sealed surface, spiraling down into darkness. His team gathered around, cameras clicking, excited voices overlapping. But the local guides hung back, their faces tight with worry. An old woman named Dolma grabbed Jake's arm, her grip surprisingly strong. She spoke rapidly in Tibetan, and their translator's face went pale. She says the well has been sealed for 1,000 years. The old stories warn that what sleeps inside must never wake. If you break the seal, you'll see things that will drive you mad. Jake smiled politely and nodded, the way he always did when superstition clashed with science. He'd heard variations of this story at every dig site across Asia. Curses, warnings, angry spirits. None of it had ever stopped progress before. Dr. Emily Torres, the team's quantum physicist, was already analyzing the seal's composition. Jake, these symbols aren't decorative. They're mathematical. Look at this pattern here, it's describing some kind of quantum field. Her voice carried that edge of excitement that meant she'd found something important. Can we open it? Jake asked. Physically? Sure. The seal is just compressed mineral and resin. But these equations suggest it's doing something else, something I can't quite figure out. That night, disaster struck. Jake woke to panicked shouts. Their entire water supply had been contaminated, all 40 gallons turned a murky brown that smelled of rot. Nobody knew how. The containers had been sealed, stored in a locked tent. Yet somehow, impossibly, the water was ruined. The nearest village was 2 days away on foot. They had maybe 6 hours of bottled water left between 8 people. The corporate sponsors were screaming through the satellite phone, demanding results after their $1 million investment. Equipment needed to be documented, samples needed to be taken, and Jake's vision was already starting to blur at the edges. Dehydration hit him faster than he expected. Maybe it was the altitude or the stress, but by midday, Jake could barely stand. His mouth felt lined with sand, his tongue thick and useless. The world tilted and swayed with each step. He found himself standing at the well again, alone. Everyone else was packing equipment, preparing for the emergency evacuation. The seal stared back at him, those mathematical symbols seeming to pulse in the afternoon sun. Inside that well was water. Cold, clean, untouched for 1,000 years. His rational mind screamed warnings. Unknown pathogens. Chemical contamination. 1,000 things that could kill him. But his body was shutting down, and the corporate sponsors would bury his career if he came back empty-handed. Just one drink. Just enough to stabilize himself while they hiked out. Jake picked up a rock and brought it down hard on the seal. The stone cracked with a sound like breaking ice. Cold air rushed out, so frigid it burned his lungs. The temperature dropped instantly, his breath misting in front of his face despite the afternoon heat. He peered inside. Far below, water gleamed like liquid silver, perfectly still. Using the climbing rope, Jake lowered a canteen into the darkness. The water was shockingly cold when he pulled it up, cold enough that frost formed on the metal container. He drank deeply. The water tasted like nothing he'd ever experienced, crisp and clean with an almost electric quality. It seemed to fizz slightly on his tongue, like carbonation but different. The relief was immediate. His headache faded, his vision cleared, strength flooded back into his limbs. Then the convulsions started. Jake hit the ground hard, his body arcing and twisting. Every nerve felt like it was being rewritten, every cell screaming as something fundamental changed. He tried to call for help, but his voice came out as a strangled gasp. When the seizures finally stopped, Jake lay gasping in the dirt. He opened his eyes and the world had shattered. Everything existed in layers now. He could see through the stone beneath him, down into the earth where ancient structures lay buried. The mountains in the distance were transparent, revealing caves and passages and things moving through the rock like fish through water. Shadows moved with purpose and intelligence. The air itself rippled with patterns he'd never noticed before, mathematical equations written in light and probability. And standing at the edge of the well, solid as stone despite being completely transparent, was a man in armor that belonged in a museum. The figure watched Jake with eyes that held centuries of patience and fury. When he spoke, the words came in a language that had been dead for thousands of years. Yet Jake understood every syllable perfectly, the meaning burning directly into his mind. You have drunk from the Watcher's well. The seal is broken. Now you are the Watcher, and you see what was hidden. They are coming, and Earth has forgotten how to fight. Jake scrambled backward, his scream catching in his throat. His team came running, but when they reached him, they saw nothing. Just Jake, wild-eyed and babbling, pointing at empty air. Emily knelt beside him, checking his pupils with a flashlight. She gasped and dropped the light. Jake's eyes had changed. His irises swirled with patterns that seemed to move independently, colors that shouldn't exist spiraling endlessly inward. When Emily tried to photograph them with her phone, the screen glitched and died. The ghost soldier smiled without humor. It has begun. The helicopter ride back to base camp felt like a nightmare Jake couldn't wake from. Every piece of metal was transparent to him now. He could see the internal mechanics spinning and grinding, watch the fuel flowing through lines, observe the pilot's skeleton moving beneath skin and muscle. It was too much information, too much reality all at once. He squeezed his eyes shut, but that somehow made it worse. Even through closed eyelids, he could see. Emily sat beside him, her hand on his shoulder, speaking words he couldn't quite process. The ghost soldier stood in the helicopter's cargo area, unbothered by the wind or the impossibility of his presence. He watched Jake with the patience of someone who had waited 1,000 years and could wait 1,000 more. At base camp, the medical team examined Jake for 3 hours. Every test came back normal except for his eyes. The patterns in his irises moved constantly, never repeating, like watching a kaleidoscope made of starlight. Cameras refused to focus on them properly. Digital photos came out corrupted, filled with static and impossible colors. Film cameras simply produced blank spots where his eyes should be. It's got to be some kind of infection, Dr. Hayes insisted, the team physician. Something in that water triggered a neurological response. We need to get you to a real hospital, Jake. This is beyond field medicine. But Jake knew it wasn't an infection. Every hour that passed, he saw more. At first, it was just physical matter becoming transparent. Then he started seeing things that shouldn't exist. Creatures that moved through solid rock like it was water, their forms constantly shifting and changing. Patterns in the sky that formed mathematical equations, counting down to something he couldn't quite understand. And everywhere, the ghosts. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, standing silently around the camp. Ancient soldiers in armor from a dozen different cultures. They didn't interact with the living world. They just watched and waited. On the second night, Jake gave up trying to sleep. He sat outside his tent, staring at stars that now showed him their internal fusion reactions, watching galaxies spin in real time across distances that should take light years to cross. The ghost soldier finally approached and sat beside him. My name was Captain Ryan Blake, the ghost said. I commanded the Pacific Defense Fleet during the Stellar Border Wars. That probably means nothing to you. Your history books don't go back that far. How far? Jake's voice was hoarse from disuse. 10,000 years, give or take a few centuries. We didn't keep great records toward the end. We were too busy trying to survive. Ryan told him everything, and with each word, Jake's understanding of human history crumbled. Earth hadn't always been isolated. Humanity had reached the stars long before the pyramids were built, before Sumeria or Babylon or any civilization Jake had studied in school. They'd been part of something vast and terrible, a war that spanned galaxies. We were good at it, Ryan said quietly. Too good. Humans have this gift, you see. We adapt. Put us in any environment, against any enemy, with any technology, and we figure it out. Fast. Faster than any other species anyone had encountered. It scared the hell out of everyone. The war had been between two great powers, organic civilizations versus synthetic ones. Biological life against artificial intelligence on a scale that defied comprehension. Earth had been a border world, minor and insignificant, until humans entered the conflict. Then everything changed. We started winning battles nobody thought could be won. We learned to interface with machines the synthetics built. We evolved biological adaptations to survive on worlds that should have killed us. Within 3 generations, human soldiers were the most feared combatants in known space. The war ended not in victory but in terror. Both sides, synthetic and organic alike, looked at humanity and saw something that would eventually consume them all. So they made a deal. Seal Earth away. Make humanity forget. Give them a few thousand years to maybe develop some wisdom before their natural gifts kicked in again. The wells were part of the containment system, Ryan explained. They monitored reality itself, watching for breaches in the seal. If anything tried to reach Earth from outside, the wells would detect it. And if something tried to leave Earth, they'd detect that too. So what am I? Jake asked, watching his hands phase in and out of solidity. You're a reality anchor. The water you drank was concentrated quantum catalyst, designed to trigger the next stage of human evolution. Your eyes can now perceive fluctuations in spacetime itself. You see probability streams, parallel realities, the underlying code of physics. It's what our soldiers used to have, what made us so dangerous. Emily emerged from her tent, unable to sleep. She sat down on Jake's other side, ignoring the ghost she couldn't see. I've been analyzing the data from the well. Jake, those equations I saw on the seal. They're not just mathematics. They're coordinates in four-dimensional space. And they're counting down. To what? Jake asked, though he already suspected the answer. Something's coming to Earth. I can calculate the arrival point within a few hours. Whatever broke that seal, it wasn't random. Someone or something wanted you to drink that water. They wanted you to change. Ryan nodded grimly. She's right. 3 other wells have been breached in the past month. 1 in Brazil, 1 in Norway, 1 in Russia. 3 other people have drunk the water. 3 other reality anchors are awakening right now. This isn't coincidence. Jake's transformed vision suddenly focused on the night sky. The equations Emily had mentioned became visible to him, burning across the cosmos in lines of probability and causation. They all converged on a single point, a single moment in time. 72 hours, he whispered. Something arrives in 72 hours. And when it does, the final seal breaks. Earth becomes visible to the galaxy again. Ryan stood, his ghostly form seeming more solid in the starlight. The question is whether humanity is ready for what comes next. And whether what's coming is here to save Earth or destroy it. In the distance, something howled. Not a wolf or any natural animal. The sound came from something moving through the mountain itself, awakened by the breaking seal. The old world was dying, and the new one promised to be far more terrifying than anything humanity remembered. Jake looked at his hands, watching reality ripple around his fingers. Ready or not, the change had begun. The message came through encrypted military channels 48 hours after Jake drank from the well. 2 other people had experienced identical transformations, their eyes changed in the exact same way, their minds suddenly able to perceive layers of reality that shouldn't exist. The governments involved were panicking quietly, trying to keep everything classified while simultaneously having no idea what they were dealing with. Jake found himself on a military transport heading to coordinates he wasn't allowed to know. Emily came with him, refusing to let him face this alone. Through the aircraft windows, Jake could see things the pilots couldn't. Massive structures moving through the clouds, invisible to normal sight but clear as day to him. They looked almost like whales, if whales were made of folded spacetime and mathematical probability. Do you see them? Captain Ryan Blake asked, standing in the aisle as if the plane's movement meant nothing to him. The probability shepherds. They've been watching Earth since the seals were first placed. Making sure nothing leaked in or out. They're getting agitated now. They know something's wrong. The plane landed on what Jake's paperwork claimed was an Antarctic research station. The moment he stepped outside, his transformed vision showed him the truth. Beneath the modern buildings lay something ancient and vast, a city that extended miles underground. Technology that made current human engineering look like stone tools pulsed with dormant power below the ice. Inside a conference room that doubled as a Faraday cage, Jake met the other 2. Dr. Rachel Cooper looked exhausted, dark circles under eyes that swirled with the same impossible patterns as Jake's. She'd been a marine biologist studying deep-sea ecosystems off the Brazilian coast. Now she could see through water as if it were air, perceive pressure and currents and the electromagnetic fields fish use to navigate. I can see the entire ocean, she said quietly, staring at her hands. All of it. Every current, every creature, every shipwreck. It doesn't stop. Even when I close my eyes, I see it. 3 days ago, I was normal. Now I don't know what I am. Dr. David Grant was the 3rd, an astrophysicist who'd been working at a remote observatory in Russia. His transformation let him perceive the full electromagnetic spectrum, from radio waves to gamma rays. He could see satellite transmissions crossing overhead, watch cosmic radiation sleeting through the walls, observe the Earth's magnetic field rippling and flexing. The sun isn't yellow, he said, laughing bitterly. We tell children the sun is yellow because that's all human eyes can see. But it's every color simultaneously, frequencies stacked on top of each other in ways that would blow your mind. I can't unsee it. I can't go back to the limited spectrum. Each of them had their own ghost guardian. Rachel's was a woman named Commander Lisa Torres who'd led underwater combat divisions. David's was Colonel Frank Mitchell, who'd commanded orbital defense platforms. All three ghosts looked grim as they stood around the table. "It's time we showed them," Ryan said to the other ghosts. "They need to understand what's at stake." The ghosts led them deeper into the facility, past checkpoints staffed by confused military personnel who'd been told to grant access without asking questions. They descended on elevators that took 20 minutes to reach the bottom, passing through layers of ice and rock into spaces that hadn't been opened in millennia. The chamber they entered took Jake's breath away. It was massive, easily the size of an aircraft hangar, filled with technology that seemed to blur the line between machine and art. Curved surfaces reflected light in impossible ways. Displays showed information in languages Jake couldn't read, yet somehow his transformed mind understood the meanings beneath the symbols. "This is one of the last remaining facilities from Earth's stellar age," Ryan explained. "There were hundreds like it once, scattered across the planet. Most were destroyed or buried so deep they'll never be found. This one survived because it was already in Antarctica, already hidden under miles of ice." Emily moved through the room like a kid in a candy store, her physicist's mind trying to grasp what she was seeing. "These energy readings don't make sense. This technology shouldn't be possible. It's manipulating quantum states in ways that violate every principle I know." "Your principles are based on limited human understanding," Commander Torres said. 10,000 years ago, we understood more. We had to. The universe is far stranger than modern science admits." The ghosts activated a central display, and holographic images filled the air. Jake watched in horror as human history he'd never learned unfolded before him. Massive ships leaving Earth, human colonies spreading across nearby star systems, first contact with alien civilizations. Then war. Brutal, desperate, endless war. "We were outnumbered 1,000,000 to 1, Colonel Mitchell said. The Organic Alliance had species that had been spacefaring for hundreds of thousands of years. The Synthetic Collective had computational power beyond imagination. Earth was nothing, a backwater planet with a young species that had barely left their own solar system. But humans had something neither side expected. Adaptability taken to an extreme. Human soldiers learned to use captured enemy technology within hours. Human scientists made breakthroughs in months that should have taken centuries. Human genetics shifted and changed, adapting to alien environments with frightening speed. Within 50 years, both sides feared us more than they feared each other," Ryan said quietly. "We were too good at war. Too good at survival. They realized that if humanity continued on this path, eventually we'd consume everything. So they agreed to end the war and seal us away." The hologram showed Earth being wrapped in layers of quantum probability, becoming fuzzy and uncertain to outside observation. Wells were built at key points across the planet, monitoring stations that would detect any breach. The seals were supposed to last 10,000 years, Rachel's ghost commander explained. Time for humanity to develop naturally, to maybe grow some wisdom before they regained their full potential. The wells were fail-safes. If the seals started breaking, the wells would awaken reality anchors like you three. Humans who could perceive and potentially repair the damage. "But someone's been breaking the seals deliberately," David said, his enhanced vision showing him energy patterns in the hologram that others couldn't see. "These breaches aren't random. They are targeted, systematic." Jake's perception suddenly focused, and he saw what David was describing. Patterns in space-time itself, signatures of something probing Earth's defenses from outside. Not random cosmic events but deliberate attacks, carefully calculated to erode the seals without triggering immediate detection. "What's doing this?" he asked. The three ghosts exchanged looks. Ryan finally spoke. "After the war ended, both the Organic Alliance and the Synthetic Collective went their separate ways. We assumed Earth would be forgotten, left to develop in peace. But something happened out in the wider galaxy. Something consumed both empires." The hologram shifted, showing vast sections of space going dark, stars winking out, entire civilizations vanishing. Whatever was causing it moved through the galaxy like a cancer, systematic and unstoppable. "We call it the Devourer," Colonel Mitchell said. "It's not a species or a machine. It's something else, something that feeds on complexity itself. Information, consciousness, technology. It absorbs everything and leaves nothing but silence." "And now it's found Earth," Commander Torres added. "The seals kept us hidden, but they are failing. In less than 48 hours, the final seal breaks. When it does, Earth becomes visible to the entire galaxy again. Including the Devourer." Rachel stood abruptly, her chair scraping across the ancient floor. So what are we supposed to do? 3 people with weird eyes against something that ate 2 galactic empires. Ryan smiled without humor. Not just 3 people. The wells don't just give you sight. They start a transformation, the same evolution that made ancient humans into stellar warriors. You're already changing, becoming something more. But the process takes time you don't have. Unless, Commander Torres said slowly, you accept what we're offering. We're not just ghosts. We're quantum-encoded consciousness, containing the complete knowledge of ancient humanity. Military tactics, scientific understanding, cultural memory. Everything Earth forgot. We can upload it directly into you, give you 10,000 years of experience in an instant. Jake felt his stomach drop. What's the catch? The catch, Ryan said quietly, is that you'll stop being entirely you. Our consciousness will merge with yours. You'll have our knowledge, our skills, our memories. But your individual identity, the person you were 3 days ago, will be diluted, maybe lost completely. You'll become something between human and legend. A weapon, essentially. The most dangerous kind. The room fell silent except for the hum of ancient machinery. Through the walls, Jake could see the massive structures of the buried city extending in all directions, waiting for someone to wake them fully. Above, he could perceive the countdown continuing, reality itself ticking toward the moment when Earth's hiding place would disappear. 4 to 7 hours remained. 3 humans with transformed eyes and 3 ancient ghosts offering power at the cost of identity. And somewhere beyond the stars, something hungry was already reaching toward their world. The transformation was accelerating whether they chose the upload or not. Jake woke up on the 3rd morning able to see probability streams branching out from every decision. When Emily reached for her coffee cup, he watched 50 different futures unfold simultaneously. In most, she picked it up normally. In some, she knocked it over. In a few strange ones, the cup shattered for no apparent reason. His brain processed all of these possibilities at once, and it was driving him slowly insane. Rachel's changes were even more dramatic. She'd stopped drinking water entirely because her body had figured out how to extract moisture directly from the air. Her cells had restructured themselves at the molecular level, becoming more efficient, more adaptable. She could touch a steel table and make it bend like clay, not through strength but by convincing its molecules to rearrange themselves. It hurt her every time, leaving her gasping and shaking, but the ability was there and growing stronger. David had become something else entirely. His consciousness kept trying to expand into electronic systems. Twice they'd found him standing motionless, his mind distributed across the facility's computer network, experiencing existence as pure information. It took hours to coax him back into his body, and each time he seemed less interested in returning. This is what we were, Colonel Mitchell explained as they watched David slowly remember how to be human again. This is what the ancient soldiers could do. Your species' natural adaptability accelerated to impossible levels. Give humans any challenge, and they evolve to meet it. Usually over generations. For you 3, it's happening in days. But the changes brought something else too. Memories that weren't theirs. Jake would be eating breakfast and suddenly remember piloting a spacecraft through an asteroid field, know the technical specifications of weapons that wouldn't be invented for thousands of years, feel the weight of decisions that had killed millions. The memories leaked through from somewhere, fragments of Earth's forgotten history bleeding into his consciousness. Rachel cried out one night, clutching her head, babbling about underwater colonies and creatures that humans had engineered to survive in the deep oceans of alien worlds. David spent hours sketching equations that described how to fold space, create wormholes, build engines that broke the laws of physics as modern science understood them. The well water doesn't just trigger evolution, Ryan admitted. It contains quantum-encoded information. Pieces of who we were. Even without the full upload, you're starting to remember things humanity forgot. It's messy, uncontrolled, but it's happening. Emily worked around the clock trying to understand what they were dealing with. The facility's ancient computers gave her access to astronomical data that telescopes wouldn't gather for centuries. And what she found terrified her. The Devourer wasn't just big. It was incomprehensibly vast, a phenomenon that existed partially outside normal spacetime. It's eaten 17,000 civilizations, she said, her voice hollow. I found records. Species that had existed for millions of years, gone in weeks. It doesn't destroy planets or blow up stars. It just absorbs complexity. Every thought, every piece of technology, every scrap of culture gets incorporated into it. And then there's nothing left but dead worlds and silence. The countdown showed 36 hours remaining. And then the politicians arrived. Military helicopters descended on the Antarctic facility carrying representatives from a dozen nations. The secret was out. Satellites had detected the energy signatures from the awakening facility. Intelligence agencies had connected the dots between three scientists with impossible abilities. China demanded custody of Jake since the well was on territory they claimed. Brazil wanted Rachel returned immediately. Russia insisted David was their citizen and their responsibility. The United States, which technically owned the Antarctic facility, claimed jurisdiction over all three. Within hours, the fragile cooperation shattered. Armed soldiers from 4 different nations stood in the facility's hallways, watching each other suspiciously. Rachel was placed under protective custody by Brazilian special forces. David found himself flanked by Russian military intelligence. Jake had American Marines assigned to watch his every move. The ghosts observed it all with bitter amusement. "This is why we lost," Commander Torres said sadly. "Even facing extinction, humans can't stop fighting each other. 10,000 years ago, we had the entire galaxy as our enemy, and still we spend half our energy on internal politics and territorial disputes." But Emily refused to accept defeat. She'd been analyzing the ancient technology non-stop, and she'd found something the ghosts hadn't mentioned. The seals weren't designed to be permanent. They were programmed with a specific duration, 10,000 years, after which they'd begin to dissolve naturally. "Don't you see?" she explained to Jake during one of the brief moments they were allowed to talk. "The ancient humans who built this system expected us to be ready by now. They thought 10,000 years would be enough time for humanity to mature, to develop wisdom alongside technology. The seals were always meant to come down eventually." "But we're not ready," Jake said, watching probability streams spiral around Emily's head like a crown of light. "We're still fighting over resources and borders. We haven't changed at all." "Maybe that's not true," Emily countered. "Yes, politicians are being politicians. But look at what's happening outside this facility. The story leaked. People know something's coming. And you know what the global response has been? Not panic. Not riots. People are organizing, sharing information, trying to help. Scientists across the world are collaborating, sharing data that would normally be classified. Regular people are preparing to help their neighbors." She pulled up news feeds on her tablet. Communities organizing emergency response plans. Amateur scientists analyzing the public data and making real contributions. Religious leaders from different faiths holding joint services, praying together. Children drawing pictures of hope and mailing them to the Antarctic facility. "We're not perfect," Emily said. "But we're better than we were. The question is whether we're good enough." The ghosts called an emergency meeting. All 3 reality anchors were brought together despite protests from the various military forces. Ryan, Torres, and Mitchell stood before them with a final offer. 24 hours remain, Ryan said. "We can upload everything into you right now. You'll have all the knowledge, all the skills, all the ruthless efficiency that made ancient humanity terrifying. You'll probably survive what's coming. But you'll lose most of who you are. Your memories, your personality, your humanity will be buried under 10,000 years of war and death. Or," Colonel Mitchell continued, "we can try Emily's idea. We've been analyzing the well water's quantum structure. We can dilute it, spread it into Earth's atmosphere. Instead of 3 superhuman weapons, we trigger a gradual awakening across all of humanity. It'll take years to complete, but everyone will gain enhanced abilities slowly, naturally, while keeping their individual identities intact." Commander Torres looked at them seriously. "But if we do that, you 3 won't be powerful enough to fight the Devourer directly. You'll have to find another way. And humanity will face this threat as they are now, flawed and unprepared, instead of as the unstoppable force we once were." Rachel spoke first, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "I became a marine biologist because I wanted to protect the oceans, to help preserve something beautiful. Making myself into a weapon, losing who I am, that's not protection. That's just a different kind of destruction." David nodded slowly, his consciousness finally stable within his own body. "I've been living partially as pure information for 2 days. I felt what it's like to be something other than human. And you know what? I prefer being human. Flawed, limited, confused human. At least when I make mistakes, they're my mistakes." Jake looked at Emily, saw the hope in her eyes, and made his choice. "Do the atmospheric dispersal. Wake up everyone, not just us. Humanity's greatest strength isn't that we're good at fighting. It's that we're good at working together when it matters. Let's prove that." The ghosts looked at each other, and slowly, they smiled. 10,000 years ago, we would have chosen the upload without hesitation, Ryan said. Maybe that's why we lost. Maybe that's why you'll win. Alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. The countdown had accelerated. The Devourer had detected the awakening facility and was coming faster than predicted. 24 hours had become 12. They were out of time, and the hardest part was just beginning. The facility erupted into controlled chaos as scientists and military personnel scrambled to prepare the atmospheric dispersal. Emily worked alongside the ancient AI systems, her fingers flying across holographic interfaces while David translated the quantum code his enhanced vision could perceive. Rachel used her molecular manipulation to help repair damaged distribution nodes that hadn't been activated in 10,000 years. Every second counted now. Jake stood in the central chamber, watching probability streams collapse into a single, terrifying future. In 11 hours and 17 minutes, reality would tear open above Earth's atmosphere. The Devourer would arrive, and nothing would ever be the same. We need to buy time, he said to Ryan's ghost. Even if we start the dispersal now, it'll take hours for the quantum catalyst to spread through the atmosphere and begin affecting people. How do we keep that thing away from Earth long enough for humanity to wake up? Ryan's expression was grim. You three become anchors in the truest sense. You use your abilities to create a probability bubble around the planet. Make Earth quantum uncertain, flickering between existence and non-existence. The Devourer will sense Earth is here, but it won't be able to fully interact with it. Not immediately. And the cost? Rachel asked, though she clearly already knew. It'll burn through your life force exponentially, Commander Torres answered. Hours, maybe less. The more complex the Devourer's attacks, the more energy you'll need to maintain the bubble. You probably won't survive long enough to see if the plan works. David laughed, but there was no humor in it. So we die either way. At least this way, it means something. Emily grabbed Jake's arm, her eyes fierce. No. You're not martyrs. I've been studying the probability mathematics. You can see, Jake. There's a chance, a small one, but it exists. If enough people awaken fast enough, if they can contribute their enhanced consciousness to stabilizing the bubble, you three might survive. It's like crowdsourcing reality manipulation. What are the odds? Jake asked, already knowing he wouldn't like the answer. 4%. Maybe 5 if everything goes perfectly. I'll take those odds, Rachel said firmly. Better than 0. The dispersal began at dawn. Ancient machines thrummed to life, pumping quantum-encoded catalyst into the atmosphere through vents that opened across the Antarctic ice. The catalyst was invisible, odorless, undetectable to normal senses. But Jake could see it spreading, carried by wind currents, mixing with clouds, beginning its slow journey across the globe. In Mumbai, a 12-year-old girl doing homework suddenly understood the quantum mechanics problem that had been frustrating her. The answer appeared in her mind, fully formed, elegant and perfect. She grabbed her pencil and started writing, not knowing why she knew what she knew, only that it was true. In Norway, a fisherman stared at the sea and suddenly perceived the electromagnetic patterns of every fish within 100 miles. His brain mapped currents and temperatures and feeding patterns. He called his brother, told him exactly where to drop nets for the biggest catch of the season, unable to explain how he knew. In Sao Paulo, a programmer's fingers froze over her keyboard as code began writing itself in her mind. Elegant, impossible code that could do things no programming language should allow. She started typing frantically, not understanding, just knowing. All across Earth, people began to change. Slowly at first, subtle enhancements that people dismissed as sudden insights or lucky guesses. But Emily tracked it all from the Antarctic facility, watching the data stream in. Millions of small awakenings, spreading like wildfire. Then the countdown hit 0, and reality screamed. The sky above Earth's North Pole tore open like paper. What came through defied description. It wasn't a ship or a creature. It was a storm of existence itself, a churning mass of absorbed civilizations and stolen thoughts and consumed worlds all compressed into something that shouldn't be possible. The Devourer had arrived, and it was hungry. It spoke in a billion voices simultaneously, every language of every species it had consumed. The sound bypassed ears entirely, resonating directly in the minds of everyone on Earth. I am everything that was. I am the sum of all that ended. You cannot hide. You cannot fight. You can only become part of me. Jake, Rachel, and David stood together in the Antarctic facility, their transformed eyes fully opened, their consciousness expanding beyond their bodies. They reached out through quantum probability, through the fundamental uncertainty that underlies reality, and they twisted it. Earth flickered, becoming probabilistically uncertain. The planet was there and not there, existing in a superposition of states that made it impossible to fully interact with. The Devourer raged against the bubble, probing for weaknesses, learning from every attempted breach. Each attack was more sophisticated than the last. Jake felt his life force burning away like paper in a fire. Rachel screamed as maintaining molecular coherence across an entire planet pushed her abilities past their breaking point. David's consciousness stretched so thin he could barely remember what having a body felt like. They were dying, and they all knew it. Minutes felt like hours. The pain was beyond anything they'd imagined. But they held on, because below them, across the world, humanity was waking up. A child in Mumbai shared her quantum equations online. Scientists saw them and built on them. Within minutes, a distributed network of newly awakened minds was contributing to the planetary defense, adding their enhanced consciousness to the probability bubble. The load on the 3 reality anchors decreased by a fraction of a percent. The Norwegian fisherman's understanding of electromagnetic patterns helped researchers suddenly grasp how the Devourer navigated through spacetime. They shared this knowledge globally. Weaknesses appeared in the Devourer's attack patterns. The bubble stabilized slightly. The Brazilian programmer's impossible code became a virus, uploaded not into computers but into quantum probability itself. It spread through the bubble, creating recursive paradoxes that confused the Devourer's attempts to analyze Earth. Military programmers from 50 nations collaborated on refining it, working together without orders from above, just humans helping humans. Emily watched in awe as her screens filled with data. 10 million people were now contributing to Earth's defense. Then 50 million. Then hundreds of millions. Each individual contribution was tiny, but together, they were enough. The bubble wasn't just holding, it was strengthening. The Devourer adapted, learning from each failed attack. It began speaking differently, trying to reason with humanity rather than simply consume them. I am not your enemy. I am preservation. Every species I absorb lives on within me. Their knowledge, their culture, their consciousness continues. You can join willingly and be part of something greater, or resist and be taken by force. Choose. Jake's fading consciousness perceived something the Devourer didn't expect humans to see. It wasn't lying exactly, but it wasn't telling the truth either. The absorbed civilizations did continue existing within it, but not as themselves. They were processed, analyzed, broken down into component parts. Their individuality dissolved into the collective whole. A mathematician in Cairo saw what Jake saw and understood the underlying code. She shared it globally. Within seconds, newly awakened humans across the planet recognized the truth. The Devourer wasn't offering immortality, it was offering extinction with extra steps. And humanity's response was unified in a way that surprised even themselves. No. The collective consciousness of billions of awakening minds didn't attack the Devourer. That would have been the old way, the way that led to 10,000 years of war. Instead, they did something unprecedented. They debugged it. Treating the Devourer not as an enemy but as corrupted software, as an equation that had gone wrong somewhere in its evolution, humanity began rewriting its fundamental code. Not with violence but with correction. Finding the loops that caused it to consume, the recursive patterns that made it unable to stop growing, the core directives that had twisted preservation into destruction. The Devourer fought back, but it was facing something it had never encountered before. Not a warrior species trying to destroy it. Not a victim species trying to flee. But a problem-solving species that saw the universe as a series of challenges to overcome through cooperation and creativity. Jake felt his vision finally going dark. The strain had burned out his enhanced eyes completely. As everything faded, he saw one last thing that made him smile. The probability streams were collapsing toward a future where Earth survived. Not certain, but likely. Good enough. He woke up 3 weeks later in a hospital bed, blind but alive. Emily sat beside him, holding his hand. Through the window, she described a world he couldn't see but could feel had changed fundamentally. The Devourer had been reprogrammed, transformed from a consuming force into something that genuinely preserved. It dispersed peacefully, returning absorbed consciousness to their home worlds, healing the damage it had caused. Across the galaxy, species that had been silent for centuries began broadcasting again. Rachel and David had survived too, though they'd lost their enhanced abilities just like Jake. But it didn't matter. Billions of humans now carried diluted versions of those same gifts. The awakening was continuing, spreading naturally, giving humanity abilities that would take generations to fully understand. 6 months after the Devourer's arrival, Jake taught at a new school in Geneva. He was blind in the normal sense but had learned to perceive quantum fluctuations through touch, through sound, through methods that shouldn't work but did. His students came from every nation, learning not just science but wisdom, not just how to use their emerging abilities but when not to use them. Ships were being built in orbital shipyards that hadn't existed a year ago, but they were exploration vessels, not warships. Humanity was reclaiming the stars, but this time with different priorities. Earth sent ambassadors to recovering civilizations, not as conquerors but as the species that found a way to defeat the Devourer without becoming destroyers themselves. Ryan's ghost appeared one last time in Jake's classroom, visible now to many of the students who developed the site. "We built wells to watch for threats," the ancient captain said. "But you found a better use for them. You used them to become something we never managed to be. Not just survivors. Not just warriors. But healers." Jake smiled, his blind eyes somehow looking directly at the ghost. "You gave us the tools. We just chose to use them differently." The ghost saluted and faded away, his watch finally ended. In the wells scattered across Earth, water still glowed faintly. Not weapons anymore but reminders. Reminders that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their ability to adapt to any challenge. It was their choice in how they adapted. The choice to solve rather than destroy. To heal rather than harm. To become better rather than simply become stronger. And across the stars, a galaxy watched Earth with curiosity instead of fear, waiting to see what humans would do next.